Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about how fueling more helped a back of the pack runner finish Dopey. This is an interview with Kai.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
Okay, I have a guest here. We have the pleasure of hearing another guest interview, hearing their running journey. I want to welcome Kai to the Running to the Castle podcast. Hi, Kai. How are you?
Ellie, I'm doing well.
Great. For runners who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in your running journey?
Sure. So I started back in 2007. Actually, it was a walking journey before it became a running journey. I was very overweight and started walking, to lose weight and set my first goal to walk a half marathon. That was November. The half marathon was into February. So that was my goal. And I had a treadmill. And my deal with myself was if I was going to watch any TV, then I had to be on my treadmill. So that was the walking I did. And I did the half marathon, finished. And when I finished, then I said, okay, well, next year my goal is to run it. Because at that point I had lost almost 80 pounds. I was, doing really well on my weight loss journey and um, feeling better. I was able to do more with that weight off of me. So I felt like now I could start running, which, I did. And so the following year, same race. I did, the half, ran, not the full thing, but majority of it. And then everything, it just, kind of kept going from there. I started working out in the mornings, doing strength training stuff. I got into spin classes and met some friends there who did triathlons. And so kind of got that bug. I remember as a young kid watching an Ironman in Hawaii, which at that time was the only Ironman there was, and seeing people cross the finish line and thinking to myself, I want to do that one day. So I started doing, working out with them, biking, swimming, and did, a sprint triathlon. And then just kept progressing with my running. I found I've been a Disney person since I was 5, and absolutely, love Disney, everything Disney, and did my first RunDisney race in 2011, and that was the Princess Half. And so after that, of course, got the bug with RunDisney races and just kept, doing them the more, longer over the years, adding more and more races and challenge. And then they added the challenges. And so I did 2 of the marathons and I had done all the challenges for the, 10Ks, halves. And then they brought in Dopey. And so I wanted to do Dopey and registered for for the 2014 Dopey. But, as with RunDisney and you're registering almost a full year out, when the time came around, just life and things in general. And I couldn't do it. And that really crushed me. Like even to this day, not doing it just stuck with me. And so it was always in the back of my mind, like, I want to do, Dopey. And between then and now, I did 2 Ironman triathlons and, kept doing running races. I injured my hip in a car accident, actually. And then, running just became just excruciating, sitting, all those things. And I tried to rehab it for a year without surgery because I'd heard horror stories about the surgery and recovery. And I was like, I can't be on crutches for 6 weeks. Like, I'm not going to be a happy person. And so I worked with a physical therapist company and we did a whole year. And My workouts were fine. It was just the things of day to day, like driving, sitting in my car and driving to Disney, 2 hours. I was just in so much pain. I couldn't make it through a day at Disney walking all day. And, that just wasn't okay with me. And so after a year, my PT was like, there's nothing else. Like, you're going to have surgery. But thankfully, for that year of prehab, surgery was a breeze. I had my surgery on a Thursday, and I had a PT appointment with the orthopedist, office on Monday. Walked into the office, and the PT looked at me, and she looked at my chart, and she was like, "You just had surgery," and I was like, "Yeah." And she did an 8-minute evaluation, and she said, "You don't need PT," and I'm like, "I know." And so, I had been out of running for a while, and I really just didn't want to run anymore. I just didn't have that to drive. I didn't, it just didn't do the things for me that it used to do. So, really took off 2 years of running and just did CrossFit, did a lot of strength training. And, but then, I was just like, I really want to start running again. And so of course, go from no running to signing up for Dopey.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I mean, it's logical, right? Um,
It's the Run
and
Disney way.
exactly. So, of course, that's in March and signed up. And um, I had a surgery in February before I signed up in March and early February, and thought that was going to be the only surgery I was going to have. And I was going to be, healed and being able to train, to be able to do it, the next January. And unfortunately, that surgery had complications and wound up with 4 surgeries throughout the year. Surgery, and then it was recovery. And then I would get back into training. And then, now we have to have another surgery. So, surgery, downtime, training, nope, another surgery. And so, I was trying to do as much walking, running as I could in between, but I ran into problem with shin splints and I wasn't able to run 20 seconds. And I was doing walk run intervals, even like as long as a minute walk after 20 seconds. And I couldn't do it. Um, and I was working with a PT at the time on a shoulder, injury. And they also, started working with my shin splints because they started developing. And I had a surgery end of September. And the week before, I had done my longest was 11 miles. And that was all walking, like, you know, running probably a minute total in all of that. I don't even know if it was that. And then I had surgery. And after the surgery, the PT was like, "Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that race in January." Well, the PT has no idea about Run Disney or Run Disney races or anything about that, no clue. And I was like, "Yeah, that's not an answer. That's not okay with me." Um, and, with registry, everything that had gone into it, the registration prices, plus I had resort, I had my niece and her fiance had registered for the half. And so I was really looking forward to it. And I knew I couldn't go and be there to support them and not race. It was just mentally, I just would not be able to handle it. So I was like, yeah, that's not an option. So, of course, Instagram was always listening, right? And scrolling
Always.
through one day, yeah, after that conversation with my, PT, and your page came up, and, you know, slow back of the pack. And I'm like, that's me. Like, I have one speed, it's forward, that's it. Um, and so I scheduled the initial, consult with you. And of course, you asked me at the time, like, kind of what is your training like? And I said, well, everything is in 42-minute intervals at this point because The Life of the Showgirl had just come out. And that's how long the album is. And you smiled and you were like, well, yeah. And we started talking about Taylor Swift. And I was like, this is the one for me. Like, she's going to be my coach. You didn't even have to tell me anything about the coaching. I was just like, she's a Swiftie. I'm in. And so you had asked me, like up till my surgery, and I told you the 11 miles, and I said, and you were like, no, we can do this, and it just gave me so much hope, to hear that, I'm willing to put in whatever work. I I can work hard. I mean, I've done 2 Ironmans. I know how to, put in the effort. And so, I signed on for one-on-one with you because at the time, from October to 1st of January, I needed the intensive, one-on-one with you. And we started, send me your training plan. And up to this point, all of my running training was just running. I thought the way to get better and faster was just to run, keep running. And so, 3 days a week of running, 2 days, shorter distances, and then a long day, and just running. And surprise, I never got any faster. Um, and then, I got introduced to, what you program and with the, speed workouts, progression, tempo, heel, all of those during the week. And then the long runs and, saying that the long runs aren't about the time, it's just the time on your feet. That's important. So it's not about the speed. It's just spending, however many miles on your feet, no matter how long that takes. And so, I started and you asked me what my goal was, and I said to finish. Like my goal was to finish Dopey, but also after be able to enjoy the parks and my family, Sunday evening and then Monday all day and not, be comfortable not being in pain and just be able to enjoy Disney after I finished Dopey. And so I did. And literally finished the marathon just all out, just sobbing. I mean, I could barely catch my breath. I was crying so hard because it took me 7 hours to finish the marathon. Um, and literally, like, hardest thing I've ever done. And again, 2 Ironmans. Um, but
Right.
it's, I think for the amount of training time I had, it's the 2:30 morning wake ups 4 days in a row. Um, and when I crossed the finish line, I was in my head, I was like, okay, one and done. I'm never doing this again. Um, but 2 weeks later, I sent you a message and I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing it again. And you're like, yeah, I'll see your registration next month in, March. And you were right. So I am signed up to do it again, in January. I'm going through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society charity to get the bib because I couldn't get one regularly. And my niece is also going to do Goofy this year, this next year. So because she wanted to do the marathon and she has friends that she is now convinced to do the half marathon. So she was like, well, why don't you just do the marathon with me? And I was like, I can't just do a marathon at Disney now. Like once you do Dopey, there's no going back. I said, one medal versus six. Are you kidding me? Like,
That
no.
ship has sailed.
I mean, as crazy as it sounds to say I'm not going to just do a marathon, yeah. And so, so she decided, she wanted to do the half with her friends and the full with me. So, she's doing Goofy and she has never been a runner. She has hated running her entire life. The half marathon this year was her first ever run race. Um, and now we're doing the New York City Marathon in November and then, marathon weekend in January. So, she's caught the bug too. And I knew she would. Like, you can't cross a Run Disney finish line, no matter what race you do, and not want to keep doing it. The experience that Run Disney has is just, it's not like any other. I mean, I've done half marathons, I've done marathons, triathlons, and there's nothing compares to a Run Disney race and the experience. And so I knew when she finished, she was going to be hooked and we were going to be doing this now regularly.
You guys are gonna be back
That's,
every year.
yeah, we will. And probably, more races, because Princess is usually the weekend of like around my birthday. So I've done tons of Princess halves and 10Ks challenges, um, and so, we'll be probably doing more than just marathon weekends. So that's where
That's
I am now,
perfect.
still
Yeah.
following your plan, getting ready to do the Dollywood inaugural runs in 2 weeks now, like the 24th.
2
Um,
weeks, yeah.
yeah, no, it's crazy. So, still, you've programmed that out for me. So my longest run, I believe, was Sunday. So now we're, tapering, and I feel good. Um, the joy that running brings me is back. Because initially training, I didn't like it. I was like, I don't like this anymore. I'm doing it because I've committed to doing it and it's important for me, but I'm not, it just doesn't bring me joy. And then one day on a run, I think it was maybe an 8-mile run I was doing, it clicked. And it was an easy run, I had fun, the endorphins were going, and I was like, it's back. My joy for running is back. My shins aren't an issue. Um, I know now that this last time they started giving me an issue a few weeks ago, and I changed, brought out a new pair of shoes, and the run this past Sunday was easy. So I think now I'll know, in the back of my mind, even though it wasn't even close to the miles on the shoes, that if that's what happens, then that's usually my cue to change out my shoes. So
Yeah, but you didn't need to change your gait. You didn't need to change the shoes drastically. It just was they had run their course literally, and you
yeah.
just needed to swap them out, and it's no more of this can't even run for 20 seconds at a time because that's what you were doing in September. You
Mhm.
couldn't even do 20 seconds without your shins on fire, and you continue to do run walk intervals, right?
Yes. Yeah. And now I'm doing 35-second run, 30-second walk, and I'm doing them really the entire length of, whatever you have programmed. I'm doing a half a mile walk warm up, and then usually whatever's left after, to get home for the cool down walk. So that's usually half a mile or so. But yeah, and yeah, like I said, back in October, there was no way that was even close to happening. Um, and really, even for Dopey, I wasn't, even doing that much. So just between January and now, I've gotten even that much better.
Yeah. Yeah, because from October to January, that is a tight timeline. That is cutting it close to be able to be able to do 48.6 miles over the course of 4 days. But
Right.
with your background of having done triathlons, the training that you could actually have that you got up to, that made it so much easier. I don't tell everybody when we first meet on that consult. Sometimes I tell them, it's not in the cards for this time around. But with your background and everything, it was a no-brainer. It was like, no, 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 no. If he puts in the work, which I knew you would, this is gonna get done.
Yeah.
And
And I
let's
mean,
just
like,
put Life of a Showgirl on repeat
you're right.
so that we
And it
have
is
42
still,
minute intervals.
and it still is. It's the first thing I start out with. No matter if it's a run, a workout, whatever, it's the first, 42 minutes of everything. But just by you saying, yeah, we can do this, that just gave me the hope, and we had just met. I mean, 30-minute phone call or whatever, however long it was. it- I was like, I trust you. I trust your knowledge. Um, I'm a physician, and, I I know what I don't know. Um, and that's why I reach out and I have coaches that do a lot of different things for me because I trust them. And if you tell me what to do, I'm going to do it because otherwise, why do I pay you? Um, and so, seeing then, after that, then going back through Instagram and, seeing more of your, reels and things, your posts and, you know, success stories with, your other clients. I was like, yeah, I trust her. And, the other thing that you helped me with was my fueling, which I was horrible at. I have tried various ways, had various other nutrition coaches, trying to force me to eat breakfast. And I just can't eat breakfast. Like, I just can't. And even like if I get up at 2:30 in the morning, I definitely can't eat any breakfast. And so, I mean, I just was so underfueled and didn't realize how much that was impacting, my performance. I mean, I did 2 Ironmans completely, underfueled, no carb loading, you know, just eating
That's
what was along the
wild
course.
to me. Now,
Yeah.
I wanna get back to the fueling in just a second, but
Mhm.
the listeners may not know what an Ironman is. Could you tell us just a little bit about what a triathlon includes and what an Ironman is?
So a triathlon is a swim, a bike, and a run. And there's sprint distances, which are shorter. You know, swim is like 800 feet, bike is 10 miles, and then it's a 5K run. And then you go up to Olympic distance, and then half Ironman, and then Ironman. And so a full Ironman is a 2.1 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and then a marathon. So,
One after
and
the other, not
right.
not one day, next
No,
day. It
all in
this
one
is
day.
one right after the other.
Yeah. So for me, it was about a 16-hour day. So, and
Yes.
training is a part time job because that's how many hours you have to put in every week for all the, miles you've got to do with all the different modalities. It is legitimately hourly a part time job. Um, and I've done two and one probably will do another one next year. Um, once I'm now, getting my running back together and, feeling better. And I'm actually doing a sprint try in May. So we've been, adding some biking and, doing some swimming as well now with my running. So
And so
that's,
you did all of that, the 2.1-mile swim, the 112-mile bike ride, and followed by a full marathon on minimal fueling.
yeah, like crazy minimal fueling. Um, Yeah, I mean, my bike rides, I had just my water bottles. Every 15 miles, they have a rest stop where, you can get more water, electrolyte beverages. Um, and then the run every mile they have, and they have all kinds of different things. My go to was I mixed Coke with Red Bull and Lay's plain potato chips. So that would just like go by, they would just fill my hands up and I would just shove them in my mouth, um, literally every mile. And that's, but prior to, a week, I mean, even the day before, like my intake for what I was going to be doing was a hair. Um, and that's something else, you give us for our long runs is this is how many carbs you need to take in during that run. And that was just mind blowing for me. Um, and then you helping me figure out what I can do in the morning to prepare, which is drink my carbs. Um, and that, a cherry Coke in the morning before I do it. And that's what I do now every morning before any workout is like crazy how much a can of cherry Coke can do. I call it, my superpower now. And then figuring out carb sources while I'm running that I can do, which, carb powders, and then other various things. I've got tons of different things that I use. And, purposely make myself, every about 30 minutes fuel with the carbs. And then the week of Dopey, you were like, you need to eat, I don't know, I think you told me 800 grams of carbs a day up to that. It was something crazy. I was like, jaw drop, like, that is a lot. Um, but up to that point, your advice had not failed me. So, I just did my best to just eat as much as I could that, entire week. Leading up to and then after each race for the rest of the day. So, I mean, I don't think I could have finished without the fueling part of that, because that is what's for me made the most impact overall with how I feel, and there were bad run days and we would talk and I was like, man, I was so irritated, I was irritable, I was grouchy, and and you were like, that's because you're underfueled. And it, it's true. It wasn't, my legs weren't hurting. It wasn't a, muscle thing. It was your muscles didn't have enough glucose getting to them, and your brain. And that's why you were, the end of the run, hating life, hating everybody, yelling at people on bikes, speeding past me on the
Well,
sidewalk.
you might do that even if you're fueled.
Oh, I do, but
You had
kind
some
of a little
close
more
calls.
extravagant. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, as a package, with everything, it's really made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's wild what, not running on Red Bull and vibes gets you, right?
Right.
And, like, I think of fueling like the Snickers commercial. It's like you're not yourself when you're hungry. It's like
Right.
you can't run when you have no fuel, and then you get angry about it. You're like Levi grumbling, like, "Grandpa, get off my lawn." It
Right.
it doesn't always work. But you had legitimate reasons for not being able to fuel. Like, if I remember correctly, like, your stomach in the morning was just like, I'm not hungry, I'm nauseous, my stomach is sloshing around if I eat something before I run. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, correct. I tried, all sorts of things to eat because, like I said, I had consulted probably 2 other, coaches, for my nutrition and my training, and, they were all like, "You gotta eat breakfast and you gotta eat, of course, oatmeal or however many carbs." I would just tell them like, "I can't," and I don't really think they believed me. I don't really think they thought I was putting in the effort, um, but like, my breakfast is a cup of coffee. I mean, and that's every day of the week. Um, and so, and that's kind of what when I told you that, that's what clicked with you when you said, "Oh, well, then you can drink your carbs." And I'm like, and you're like, "Just go buy some soda." And I was like, "What a wild idea." I mean, so simple, but, you know, made all the difference in the world. And also during the week of being at Disney, I started using because I was always using sugar free, creamer um, on a regular basis. And so I bought, regular sugar creamer, flavored creamer. And then I bought whipped cream to put on top. And so
Yum.
that was my coffee in the morning, getting ready. And then on the bus and waiting was my Coke or, whatever soda. And I even actually was able to eat because you sit and wait for so long. After my drink, my Coke, I got those mini bagels, so, about this big. And I toasted them in the room, put some cream cheese on them, and brought them with me just to see, like, okay, can I get this in, before we start? And, like I said, because it's, hours of just waiting, I was even able to eat one of those before each race. So that was a big thing, it was because I was like, if I can, whatever more I can get in is going to be better. And, you know, because of the way Disney races are, which aren't like any others where you get up, you go, you start, you're done. You get up, you wait, you wait, you wait, you hurry up and wait and wait and wait and wait. And so just that extended period of time of being awake and having the, liquid carbs in me, I was also able to get in some solid, carbs as well. So,
That's perfect. Yeah, because you're right. Other races, like if somebody hasn't done another race besides Run Disney races, like you show up and it's like you go find your corral and then
mhm,
15-30 minutes later, it's go. And so you show
right,
up for like an 8 o'clock start,
right.
right? Like
Exactly.
none of this 4:30 BS for the
Right.
marathon at Run Disney. It's like an 8 o'clock and nine
Hmm.
o'clock start. You show up a little bit before and then you're done. I mean, if it's a half marathon, you're done in 3.5 hours, but it's not hurry up and wait. And I mean, doing the marathon, you're up at 2:30. You get to the corral at 3 o'clock, but you
Hmm.
don't start, especially for us back at the Packers, you're not starting until like 5:45. So you have two
Right.
and a half to 3 hours of hurry up and wait. I use that time to post Instagram reels and whatever content I took the day before at the race, post that then, drink all the carbs, eat all the carbs, and then you still have to run 26.2 miles and you're not finishing until like noon.
Yeah. 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 7 hours later.
Yeah.
And I mean, and in that time, like, I saw you, in Animal Kingdom, and then it was like my phone was going dead. I
That's right.
have portable chargers, and for whatever reason, I didn't put it in my running pack. Um, and so I ran into one of the merchandise at Expedition Everest because they had the, ones you can purchase. But for some reason, my Apple Pay was not working. I tried, I have all my cards on Apple Pay and I tried every one of them and it just kept denying them. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. So I couldn't get a power thing. So I was like getting dead. So I was texting, my niece because she was following along with me and she had just given me a Coke in Animal Kingdom she got for me. And I told her, I said, okay, go find me one and, meet me at the boardwalk with it. And so, but literally turning out of Animal Kingdom into the worst and hardest part of the marathon from Animal Kingdom to Blizzard Beach through Blizzard Beach, which is, the worst. Um, Besides the ESPN route, that one's also bad too, but they've changed and added, this other horrible route. But yeah, my phone was dead. So I didn't have my prompts for my run walk intervals because that was, on my phone. I didn't have music,
No
um,
Taylor Swift.
nothing. I didn't have you. And because you kept me updated about where the balloon ladies were, how far ahead of them I was, you kept,
Yep.
the motivation and everything you were sending me.
Sent you some
And
Taylor Swift videos. I won't say
you
because I tend
did.
to not
Right.
swear on here, but it's the
Right.
S
Yes.
up.
And that, made me laugh and smile every time. And, I was just like, I just have to double down and, you know, keep one foot in front of the other, walk, run as I feel. Um, and I was like, this is just like an Ironman because for an Ironman triathlon, you're not allowed to have any kind of, headphones, music, anything like that for safety. So, a 16-hour event with no music. So I was like, okay, you've done that. That's what you're doing now. And also too, with all the other people at that point around me were all just as miserable as I was. So we could all commiserate together and, make each other laugh and um, which was helpful. And so then, yeah, got on the boardwalk. My niece gave me the power, charger, and I plugged it in. But of course, my phone was so wet from my sweat, of being in my pocket. It wasn't working anyway because it had been waterlogged.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, so I plugged it in to charge it, but I still, because my parents were also there, and they were right as the end of the boardwalk into the entrance of Epcot, and waiting for me. And they had asked back at Animal Kingdom, like, "Where are you?" And I was like, it was before I got into Animal Kingdom, and I was like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what mile I'm at right now. I don't even know who I am right now. I
Don't
mean,
ask hard questions right
right? And they're
now.
like, because they were trying to find out, what time to see me and be there, and I was like, I honestly can't tell you. Like, I don't know. And so, I knew they, were waiting and didn't have any idea, where I was or when they were going to see me, but they did. I did see them, um, at the end and, just power through. 'Cause I knew I was like, quitting was not an option because I'm like, you're going to have to do this again. You know, you're going to finish this. So I knew if I quit then at that point, I had been through all of that up to that point. And at that point, I was like, I'm not doing this again. And I would never be happy without finishing. And so that was just kind of my motivation is like, stopping is and quitting isn't an option. Like, doesn't matter how much everything hurts right now. Um, and how dehydrated I was, and it was not an option. And luckily was far enough ahead of the balloon ladies, had enough lead at the beginning that I was able to not have. I didn't even really ever see them, which was also good because I kept looking and I kept asking the people around me like, "Do you know where the balloon ladies are?" And some people knew because they had other people tracking them, and um, so yeah, like I said, made that corner and saw the finish line and was like, I finished. So
And had the best cry finish line photos I think I've seen in
Yes.
a long time.
Yeah. Those, I mean, I didn't even cry after I finished the Ironman. I mean, that is just how much doing Dopey and finishing meant to me,
I'm
just
It was
mentally.
12 years in the making.
Right. Yeah. And it had been, every year it was just not the year, to commit so early out to being able to do it the next year. And I was doing, like I said, I was doing Ironman triathlons. I was doing CrossFit. I was wanting to compete in CrossFit as a master's athlete. So I was training and doing that. And that was 4 hours a day of CrossFit, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening to compete. And so, my attention had shifted elsewhere during those times, but it was still always, in the back of my mind. And, since pretty much, I had stopped, competing, stopped doing CrossFit, just stuck with strength training. Um, that's kind of how it crept back in and, was like, yeah, now's the time to get back and do it.
That's perfect. It has been incredible because I knew your journey, briefly beforehand, and I only say briefly because you're right, when we first decided to work together, like, you had found my Instagram page, and it was, like, 30 minutes later, "Let's set up a time to talk," and I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
"Okay." Like, we are on it.
Yeah. I mean, I sent you a message, like, just kind of basically like, this is what I'm doing. This is where I am. Like, can you help me? And you were like, yes. You sent me your link and I was like, boom. I think it was probably that same week we were, having our consult. So
Yeah,
yeah.
because
And you
it
were
was
like,
also
and you were like, do you want to, think about it? I'm like, no, like, I'm ready. Let's do it right now. Send me the payment and, we'll start training next week. And that was literally it.
Yep, yep, I heard "Life of a Showgirl," let's get this going.
Exactly.
Which it's funny, I now use the Life of a Showgirl album as a timer because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, it's like 45
Yeah,
minutes long." Like,
right.
"Okay, let's just play the whole thing. Let's start with Fate of Ophelia, and
Mhm.
let's just go through Life of a Showgirl, and when it's done, I know that my 45 minutes is up, and I need to either be done with this task and move on, or I know that this is taking longer than it should."
Yeah.
But
I
you're the
mean,
one that told
it's
me it
great.
was about 42 minutes, and I was like, "Ah, perfect."
Yeah. And it's, it's not a shuffle album. It is a start to finish, you know, and it was the perfect album. I mean, I've been a Swiftie. I tell people before Swiftie was a thing. Like, I've been following Taylor since she was 15. I saw her perform in a parking lot in Nashville, with Tim McGraw. And I like fell in love with her then and followed her. And then when she decided to cross over to pop, I was like, I don't think that's such a good idea, you know? And of course, I was wrong. Um, but of all of her albums, like First Reports Department came at a great time in my life as well. At kind of what I was going through, and then The Life of a Showgirl. There could have never been a more perfect album for me at that time, and still is. I mean, just the music, and I mean, you cannot not be happy listening to that album, and it's just you know it's a motivator, and it's just was the perfect album at the perfect time. So
It was perfect. So that album came out, that was my birthday week, so I just
ah,
talked about it all week. My sister was in town and she's like, "Are you ever gonna stop talking about this new Taylor Swift album?" No.
uh,
And it came out on Mean Girls Day, which is one of my favorites as well. So it
uh,
was like a triple whammy. It was birthday week, it was Mean Girls Day, it was Taylor Swift Day. It was
yeah. I mean,
wonderful.
I started talking about it, when she announced it, and kind of like, and I was kind of like, how does this fit with Taylor? Um, because up to that point, I mean, of course, her life was completely different than Portrait Poets, and but was like, I don't like because we had no clue, right? When she said it, what kind of album it was going to be, and then she released, the tracks and the names, and I was like, ooh, that kinda caught my attention and waited and, like, legitimately listened to it at midnight. Um, there is literally nothing I will stay up to midnight to do, like, nothing, except listen to a Taylor Swift album.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I had it, on my TV with the lyrics going while it was playing and was like, "Wow." And, yeah, haven't stopped listening to it since. So, it it's just it's her magic. That's the only way I can explain it.
It's her magic. And, you were saying earlier that, like, changing up how your different running paces and everything. Well, our girl Taylor does that too, because to train for the Eras Tour, she walked the slow songs and she busted her butt running on the faster songs. And that's how she trained to be able to
Mhm.
sing and be entertaining for 3.5 hours for the
Yeah.
Eras Tour. It's the same
Yeah,
concept.
and
She and I are the same person.
exactly, exactly. I actually had to, I had a long run. I don't even remember. It was long, but I was on call that weekend, so I couldn't, like, leave my house for my long run, and I have an assault runner, so I was gonna have to do it, you know, on my assault runner, and so I got on my iPad, pulled up, the Eras Tour, and ran along with it, and it just, like, humbled me because, I mean, by the time it was over, like, I am one big, hot, sweaty mess. Like, I don't know how she did it in stilettos, mind you, managed still to look amazing throughout the entire thing and sing, um, throughout all of that. When, like, the 3.5 hours, I was toast, you know, and still had, I think, probably even maybe an hour or more I had still had to do that day. So, I was just like, I don't know how she did that, because I went to 5 of the Eras Tour concerts. And so I always remember, like, just being a part of the audience, how exhausted I was when they were done. And I had Tampa, she had 3 shows, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I had tickets to Thursday and Saturday, and I wanted to go Friday, but I was waiting to see if I could get, like, last minute cheaper tickets because I had a floor seat, so I'd spend a ton on that. Um, but after the concert Thursday, which was when I was on the floor, like, Friday morning, I was like, "I can't do this tonight." Like, and then do it again Saturday. I mean, I legitimately spent the entire day in my recliner. That's how tired I was. But she did it back to back to back to back to back nights and weeks and months and 2 years. Um, and yeah, I mean, just being a part of the audience the next day was just I was toast because it was just exhausting just, singing and dancing around with everybody else. So to perform at that level, it's like none other. I don't know
It's
how
an
she does
it it's
it.
crazy, and it was good prep for you for the Dopey challenge, getting being up and ready and somewhat active for however many hours, even if some of those hours you're just sitting around waiting in the corral. It's your own Eras Tour. It's the Dopey
Yeah,
challenge.
right. Exactly. I'll think about it like that.
This is how I'm gonna keep you motivated for Dopey for next year, is just think what Taylor could do.
Right,
Just think of what
exactly.
Taylor did. If she can do it
Yeah,
for, however many shows, you can do it for 4 days.
for right. I mean, really, 4 days, 48.6 miles. What is that?
That's nothing compared to what Taylor went through.
Yeah, exactly. So,
That's so cool. So, knowing what you know now, like, what would you tell yourself looking back at, like, the 2014 Dopey that did not happen and how you were feeling after that? What would you tell yourself, or if another listener has had a similar situation where they've signed up for it, couldn't do it for some reason? What would you tell them, or what would you tell yourself from 2014?
that it just wasn't the time. It wasn't the right time for me, and that right time will come. And it may not be the next year, it may not be 5 years, it may be 10 years, but if it's something that you really want to do, it will happen when it's supposed to happen. And, that's kind of my best advice, to myself then, because like I said, like it devastated me to not be able to do it. Because up until that point, I had never not done, everything in my life I had started, I finished, whether school, I mean, anything in my life, not just athletic related. If I had a goal, I finished that goal. There was no question. And so that was kind of the first thing in my life that I wasn't able to finish. And, and so it was hard. But again, it just wasn't my time. And that desire never went away, and the time took longer for me to get to it. Um, but I did it and it happened. And so, just don't give up on it if it's something you really want to do because your time will come. It will happen. Um, you know, Life keeps going on. There's always tomorrow. As long as you're putting one foot in front of the other, you're making progress. So, that's kind of when I get to the end of these long runs, now in training, like my long one Sunday, I walked the last mile and a half. I was very dehydrated. I did not hydrate well enough the day before. And now that Florida, we're in summer in Florida and it's so humid. Um, and the path I was on was wide open, like there's no shade. Um, and I went through like six of my bottles of, kept filling up and electrolytes and it was just that's why I was cramping. I knew why I was feeling the way I was because I was just dehydrated. But so the last mile and a half I walked and I was just like, one, I have no other option. I have to get to my car because it's a trail. So there's no lift to come pick me up. There's the only option for me to get back to my car is I have to walk there, you know? And so, I was just like, just one foot in front of the other and you'll get there. It's going to take you a little longer, but that's okay. Because the week before I had done 10 miles and I had done great. I mean, I was like ran the whole thing except for my warm up and cool down. I felt great. It was a great run. Um, and that's kind of something also you've taught me through all of this is that you're going to have bad days running and it's okay. As long as, like you said, as long as you're putting the effort in and you're still, life gets in the way and life's going to keep getting in the way. It always gets in the way. But as long as it's not consecutive weeks and you're still hitting most of your training and you're just, like you put one foot in front of the other, you're going to be okay. Bad days are okay. We talked about them, talked about how I was feeling, and we try to kind of process why maybe that was the way it was, whether it was fueling or just, I was just too tired, fatigue, whatever, and worked out, plans for the next run. And then the next week would be fine. And so it's just to remember too that you're going to have bad days of running and you're going to hate it and you're going to say, I don't want to ever do this again because I did. But there's tomorrow and it'll be better. Just keep going on, keeping at it, and it'll pay off. The reward will pay off.
Will. And I love the one foot in front of the other because fast or slow, a mile is a mile, right? Like you're going to get to the destination, you're going to get across the finish line. And that actually reminded me that how do you feel about the speed workouts now?
I love them. I really do. From the tempo runs, progression, the hill, the 30-20-10, which initially, no. And I think there was one progression run, like with the, speed you had me starting out. I'm like, you had me starting out at a sprint at that point because that speed at that point was a sprint. And you were like, oh, yeah, I guess I did. Because I was like hating you because I was like, my first 2 minutes, I have to sprint at 7.3, of course I was walk running, but I was like right off the bat, 10-minute walk warm up and then bam, I'm sprinting. I'm like, but now like I start off and most days I'm like first 15 minutes, I'm like, I don't want to finish this. I don't want to do it. And then the longer I go, the easier it gets. And then before I know it, we started out, would you start out like 30-minute ones? And then we went to 45 and now we're at an hour. And first time I saw an hour one pop up, I was like, are you kidding me, Allie? An hour?
Ears were
But
burning
now,
that day.
yeah, but now it's like, like I said, some days, first 15 minutes suck. And I like in my head, I'm like, I want to quit. I want to quit. I want to quit. But then I'm like, okay, no, just do the next section. And for me, with any of my workouts, I'm always do like take it a section at a time. Like if I wake up in the morning and I don't want to work out, I do my carbs anyway and I get my clothes on. And so I say, okay, if you do that and you still don't want to, then you don't have to. But then usually I'm like, okay, then I'll do my warm up. And I'm like, okay, well, after my warm up, if I still don't want to do this, then I'm not going to do it. And then I'll get to the next section and the same thing. And before I know it, I'm done. But there have been days where I have quit after the warm up. It doesn't always, I don't always get through it, but I'm more gentle with myself now. Not finishing a workout. Whereas you know, 10, 20 years ago, there was never an option for me not to finish a workout. There was never an option for me not to be in the gym for 4 hours. Even one day of mistraining or one missed section or whatever was just like failure, you know. Um and now I see that I still get the results even if there's a day where I don't work out when it's a planned day to work out. And like I said, I'm a lot more gracious with myself. And I know that, the plan works. If you just stick to it 80% of the time, you know, that's good enough. And that's okay because, we all don't have the same 24 hours in a day. Everybody has different responsibilities, families, work, life. And a lot of times all of that gets ahead of a workout. And, you know, and that's okay. You just, make it to the next day and, you know, do your best the next day.
How do you think you got to that point to be so gracious to yourself and so kind to yourself, essentially, with these workouts? How do you think you got there?
Lots of therapy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, spending lots of time with my therapist because I am my biggest critic. Um, like I said, anything I start, I finish. And I also have a standard in that as well. Medical school was, not just about getting through, but it was getting through, with all A's. Residency wasn't just about finishing, it was having to be chief resident, my last year. And so when I have a goal, they're pretty lofty. Um, and if anything fell short of that, whether it was, a B on a test and not an A, I was just beating myself up. And then I was making myself put in twice as much more effort to make sure that never happened again. And just not ever being able to forgive myself for, a shortcoming. And we're human. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in therapy, um, learning how to be kinder to myself, and, her saying, you wouldn't tell any other person, whether they're your friend or their enemy, the things you tell yourself. Like, no way would you ever tell anyone else that. So, why is it okay for you to speak to yourself like that? And that was, kind of one of those eye opening moments for me, that, yeah, you're right. Like, I wouldn't tell my worst enemy some of the things I tell myself. And you know, that's not okay. It's not serving you. I was run down. I was depressed. I was anxious, um, and was like, obviously, what you're doing isn't working. You're run down. You're not having joy. And what used to bring you joy, you know, is like CrossFit brought me so much joy. And I was just, when I decided to start competing and training as hard, I lost that joy and what I had once loved when I was doing it an hour a day um, as exercise. And that's it was just like, why are you doing it then? If it's not bringing you joy and you're competing and then you don't win, you're a failure. And so you have to work out that much harder to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And I was just like, I'm getting too old, to not have joy in all the things I do in my life. And so, that's what I stick with. And, at this point, if I do something and I'm like, I don't like it, I don't find joy in it, I'm not going to keep doing it. No matter if it's something I thought, okay, I'm going to set out and do this and we're going to have this goal met, whatever it is. If I started out and I don't like it and I don't enjoy it, then I'm like, I drop it. I don't feel like I still have to keep going to finish every single thing that I decide to start.
Yeah, and especially with these types of events, training for Dopey, for you training for the triathlons or the Dollywood challenge. Like you're spending so many hours training for these things, you might as well enjoy it, right?
Yes. Because otherwise, why?
Why? Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And you don't have to
Yeah.
run yourself into the ground, which actually brings up another point. What did you, when you think back, and you might be right at the top of your head, when I first told you how slow you had to go on your long runs, do you remember what you thought about that?
Well, my initial thought is I have one pace, and that's forward. I mean, because that had been, like I said, up to the point of meeting you, that's my running training was just running. And
That's right.
I have one speed and it's forward. Like, don't ask me about paces because I had no clue what I was running because it was just forward and very slow.
Yeah.
But, you know, but you kind of emphasizing this isn't race pace or this isn't, this is just forward essentially. It was you just telling me it's more about the time, not the speed or, the distance, because you just need to get your body used to spending that much time, on your legs. And also the fueling, not based on the miles, but based on the time as well. So,
Yes.
like, you know, the marathon, it wasn't about fueling for 26.2 miles. For me, it was about fueling for 7 hours because that's kind of how we figured how long it was going to take me. I had a goal for 3:30 for my half, which I did. I think I was like 3:29.
Yep.
But I knew the next day we're going to double that. I was not going to get faster in my marathon because of how the short time of training and how just exhausted I was anyway. So I was like, my goal is again, stay in front of the balloon, let decent finish. And so if that takes me 7 hours, then that's what it's going to take me. Um, but I also know that I had all of my fuel on me to do that. Because, I had, your guidelines to tell me this is how many carbs you need for your marathon. And that's how many I had on me. And in addition to taking in, what Disney had with Powerade and that kind of stuff along the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, my niece getting me a bottle of Coke at Animal Kingdom. Like that really saved me as well because it kind of gave me an extra little umph, there leaving Animal Kingdom, drinking a 20-ounce Coke on the route. So,
Yeah. It's your superpower.
yeah, it is. I found out. And then the tortoise I got to pet too. That also helped because they had
Oh, you
outside
did?
of yeah, outside of Animal Kingdom, they had a few animals and they had a tortoise. And so I got to pet him and take a selfie. So, I have a pet turtle and so I love turtles and they're kind of like my good luck kind of charm, if you will, because the trail I bike on when I'm training for my Ironmans because it's long enough is rural, remote, and the days I would see a turtle crossing were my best days. And I don't. It's just the thing. And so when I turned and there was tortoise was there, I was like, this is my sign. Like you're gonna do this, And um, so yeah, that was kind of interesting because I had not ever in the other marathons I'd run at Disney, they had not had animals out like that on the backside of Animal Kingdom. I mean, at least for any races I had done. So,
Right.
that was new and it was exciting. And so,
It's awesome. Well, Kai, we will wrap up, but I want to give you a chance. Is there anything that I didn't know to ask that you think the audience would benefit from hearing from you?
um, it's something that I emphasize to my niece because, like I said, she'd never been a runner and she was training and, upset about her pace, or she didn't finish all of her miles for the day because she just couldn't, or she was walking. And I said, when you cross that finish line, that medal is the same no matter how you got there. Like, everybody's medal's the same. It doesn't say you walked half of it. It doesn't say you ran all of it. It's the same medal. And you cross that finish line. Again, it doesn't matter how long it took you. It doesn't matter how you got there, even if you crawled. Like, you finished and you have that medal around your neck. And, that's just what I kept telling her. I'm like, it doesn't matter how you do it. And keep in mind, you've not even ever done a 5K before. Like, you're jumping right in to a half marathon. So, like, she's very high achiever as well. We all get it honestly. And she's very hard on herself as well. And, just kind of helping her, guide her through her training and just reminding her that, like you said, a mile's a mile, however you do it. And so don't worry about how you get there. Just get there. Because the reward's the same, whether you're first or you're last. And at Disney, when you're last, it's a pretty amazing finish, to be honest. Because it's a celebration, just like they do with the first person that crosses, which is I think is amazing, and everybody sticks around to cheer on those last runners, um, and that's a big deal as a slow back of the pack runner because I and the Ironman's the same way. I mean, like midnight finishing, and there's still tons of people at the finish line cheering you on. The announcer's still announcing, your name. You're an Ironman. Um, but I've also been a part of races where like you get to the end and the last few miles, and like the aid stations are closed up, like they don't even have water or anything left because they've run out, and there's like nothing, and it's really disheartening. Um, and so that's, a thing about Run Disney is how they celebrate every single person that starts and finishes their races the same.
I
So
love that.
just do it and finish it and be proud of yourself.
Whether you have to run, walk, or crawl, you did the same
Exactly.
mile as the person who finished first.
Yeah, and I mean, marathon runners who do marathons in, almost sub 2 hours, mind you, at this point, some of the top males and the females too, they will tell you, like, they don't know how we 7-hour marathoners do it. They're like, "I could never run that long, for that long of a time." I mean, they actually look up to us because we are able to go for 7 hours and, when they've been done for, 5 of those hours. But and it is a feat because it's, a long time to be on your feet. So keep that in mind that, the fastest marathoners in the world really look up to us slow back of the pack runners because we're able to do it for so long and sustain it for so long.
Yes. It's amazing to see runners do the thing, keep going 1 foot in front of the other for 7, even 8 hours at these Run Disney races. It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, Kai, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for asking me.
This has been great.
Yep. And I look forward to many, many more months of training. We've got a lot of races to do.
We have a lot of races to do. And who knows, maybe Taylor Swift will come out with another album
Oh,
that
well,
we can put
she
on
will.
repeat. Of
Yeah,
course.
she will. So
I can't wait for it.
Please take what you've learned in this episode and use it to adjust your strategy for your Run Disney race training. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things in the right balance so you can finish strong, not broken. And if you want personalized guidance specific to your race, your injury history, your running background, and your goals, that's exactly what we do inside Stronger, Faster, Finisher. You'll get step-by-step instructions and a proven system to help you train smarter from start to finish. Join the waitlist today to be the first to know when it opens next. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.